ligament. You were involved in that decision to avoid surgery. Tell us about that story.
Well, there's a challenge right now, and that is the perception is that if you injure your ligament, you can have surgery and you can get back with a stronger elbow. And with a stronger elbow, that means better performance, throw harder, more velocity, better control, and then you get the surgery out of the way because it's inevitable. So some guys throw in an abusive fashion and they say, once it goes, and now I can move on. Well, that's not the truth. And many of these athletes, they have attritional changes. It's Dr. Andrews likes to call it the wire hanger that starts to bend. And after a certain number of bends, it finally gives. And if you've had a few bends in your wire hanger, it makes sense to add in some layers of protection. So unfortunately, Tanaka had some changes in his ligament. He developed symptoms. I happened to be in Seattle at the time at our sports meeting. It was right in July around this time, about 2 weeks from now. And he was flown in to see me because I couldn't leave this meeting. I had a bunch of presentations to give. And it was amazing that the media follows him wherever he goes. So there was media outside of my presentations following me to see where I was going to see him in a hotel room. So
you're talking about the Japanese media.
The Japanese media.
Well, they used to follow Arabu home when he was here. That's what they do.
So here's the thing. This is what's sobering. Not every player who has Tommy John surgery is going to come back as the same player. Getting back to pitching is quoted as about 80 to 85%. And we published some work looking at not just can you throw at a reasonable level, are you the same pitcher that you were before you got injured? That's what managers want to know. That's what ownership wants to know. That's what the player wants to know. Only 67% of players who have the surgery come back as the same player with regard to performance. So it's not a slam dunk anymore. So if you have a ligament that is not completely ruptured and has some potential to be managed, that through all the techniques that we have to manage our body through the kinetic chain we talked about, we have some biologic treatments which you offered to Tanaka, which I gave him to help his ligament heal. That is something that is worthwhile. And the media they're ready to jump on mistakes because the drama is strong when something fails or something goes wrong. And it was a calculated decision, and almost everybody was waiting, and many still are waiting for his ligament to fail. And it may, but right now the player's happy, the organization's happy, I'm happy. And so keeping a guy out of the operating room is satisfying.
And right now he's the closest thing they have to an ace. Dr. Fleisig, last month you and Dr. Andrews authored a study in a publication called Sports Biomechanics that looked at 111 healthy pitchers ranging from the youth level to the major leagues. What did the data show?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say in front of everybody, I want to congratulate you, Ed, and we're all humbled by what you do. I mean, I've known you for several years from the radio and sports, but what you do for this charity, I've watched you do this for years and come to Birmingham Barons and everything, and congratulations on what you're doing for all this. The study we published recently, again, we've published many studies over the years. Some are about biomechanics, which this one was, and some were more about pitch counts. This one looked at the biomechanics of pitchers of different ages, from major leaguers to minor leaguers, college, high school, and youth, different groups. And it looked at them throwing fastballs and curveballs and changeups, and looking to see whether the fastballs are more stressful or less stressful than the curveballs, and if it's different for different ages. Now, why do we do this? We've previously done studies looking at curveballs compared to fastballs for kids. And people were saying, oh, curveballs are safe pitches for adults, but kids don't know how to throw them, so they shouldn't do them. Well, the study, Dr. Andrews and I have been working for years trying to prove that the curveball is the big devil in the room. But our research does not show it. Our research continues to show, like what John Smoltz was saying and Leo and everyone was saying, that too many pitches thrown too hard is what's different nowadays than before. So the curveball, the research shows that the curveball's stress on the elbow is similar to the fastball's stress on the elbow, and this is true whatever level you're at. The changeup is the least stressful pitch on the elbow.
You were quoted as saying it wasn't the invention of the curveball that increased risk, and now I'm opening up the door here. It was year-round baseball, unquote.
For sure, for sure. And again, Tommy's talking about stories when he was growing up, and Tommy and I have a lot of credibility. Between us, we have, I think, 288 Major League victories, right?
Right. Yeah.
Back in Tommy's days, or anyone's days, there were enthusiastic parents who wanted their kids to play year-round. There were kids who threw curveballs. There were kids who threw fastballs. There were kids who were good pitchers. There were kids who were so-so baseball players. But and we didn't have the epidemic of Tommy John injuries that we have nowadays. So what's different? It's not that enthusiastic parents were invented recently or curveball was invented recently, but in all that scenario, what's changed is today's generation is the ability to play organized baseball all year round. And I'm emphasizing, Ed, the word organized baseball. As Leo was saying, you could play baseball and you could play catch with your brother or with your friends or in the sandlot and everything. And that's what we did in our days. And so there were limited number of organized games you guys played when you were high school or minor league, high school or amateurs. But nowadays, in New York or Alabama, where I live, where the weather's nice all year round, kids are on these year-round leagues, playing every fifth day, throwing as hard as they can. And then when they can't up here, then they go to a showcase in Florida and they haven't thrown for 2 months and they go and throw as hard as they can. So there are a lot of factors. It's not a cut and dry thing, but I think the biggest crime is the year-round, throw as hard as you can. I think that's the biggest thing that's changed. That's the biggest contributing factor.
So if the type of pitch doesn't make a difference, why the spike in elbow injuries?
The spike in elbow injuries is because today's major leaguer, young major leaguer, is the first generation to grow up with year-round baseball. Right. And that's what's changed.
Longer seasons and more pitches also play a role.
Yes, yes. So when they were amateurs, before they show up, Dr. Ahmad could attest to that. He sees the rookies who get drafted, and if you check them out, some of them have damage already in their elbow. And when you have to do surgery on perhaps a 25-year-old pitcher, Dr. Andrews tells me all the time, he never saw a 25-year-old pitcher with damage like this. This is what a 40-year-old elbow used to look like. So it's not on the watch of the major leaguers. It starts in the organization of amateur baseball. And I wanted to just one more thing. Dr. Ahmad and I and others, the commissioner's office has formed a committee, a task force committee.
I was just going to bring that up, right?
The Pitch Smart committee. It's pitchsmart.org, and we're meeting like 2 weeks from now. And we're trying to get some research out there, and that website, pitchsmart.org, has a lot of information available to the public, and hopefully getting into the heads of parents and their kids.
Tommy, you were going to say something?
1976, that's my first year coming back to pitch Major League games. I'm in spring training. Well, if you go back in baseball history, 1976, the owners locked the players out of spring training. They were trying to break the union again, and to no avail, but half of spring training was cut out. Now, Tommy John had not pitched in a Major League game since July 17th of '74. Had the surgery. I pitched in the Arizona Instructional League. I started 7 games in 28 days. And the Dodgers got mad at me, Al Campanis did, because I wouldn't go to the Dominican and pitch out the rest of the winter because he wanted to see if I could pitch. I said, Al, you'll see me in spring training. If you don't like what you see, release me, send me home. And so anyway, 3 weeks spring training, 1 week to get in shape, 2 weeks to pitch and get. I threw 3 innings against the Mets, my first start, 5 innings against the Astros, my second start, 7 innings against the Angels, my third start, and ready to start the season. The Astro game, and this right here is what Glenn was saying, and this was the start of the downfall of baseball, pitching. I pitched 5 innings, I struck out 10 Astros. Now that was an Astro team that had Art Howe, Enos Cabell, Bob Watson. I mean, they had guys that could hit. I struck out 10 of them. I felt pretty good, you know, I walking up to the clubhouse, and I see a guy coming down from the stands, Dixie Walker. He was a coach in the Dodger organization. And Dixie had this Birmingham, Alabama's, "Yeah, buddy, you better be getting that fastball up there, little batter." I said, "What? You better be getting that fastball up there, little batter." I said, "What are you talking about?" "We had the radar gun on you." Now, the radar gun, Al Campanis bought the radar gun, and I gunned every pitcher in the National League in 1975. Every pitcher, you know, Seaver, Carlton. Seaver didn't throw that awfully hard. 92. Carlton, 91, 92. The James Rodney Richard threw the hardest at 94 or 5. But now here comes a guy down there, and you put a radar gun in the hands of a fat Greek Italian, Al Campanis, and you better get that fastball up there. I said, "What was I throwing?" You ought to be throwing that ball about 86, 88 mile an hour. Maybe a couple in there, 89, yeah. And I said, "You tell that fat SOB, if he can tell me what I threw before I had my surgery, I'll throw it again my next start." And Dixie looked at me and he laughed and he said, "Damned if I know." And I said, "That's exactly right." I said, "Dixie, I'm going to get batters out. I don't care how hard I throw. I'm going to get batters out." And throwing hard is not, and right then, when we started having all this, I thought back, 1975, and the Dodgers, first team I knew that had a radar gun. And it started 1975, something put in the hands of people that don't know crap about pitching, and they equate speed for being good. No, batters, you know, if you get batters out, you're good. And I told him, I don't care if you put the ball in your butt and you fart it up to home plate. If you can get batters out, you can pitch on my ball club. If you throw it 98 and can't get batters out, go home and sell used cards on your dad's lot.
Leo, does guys like Glavine and Maddox even get signed today? Guys who were artists, guys who knew how to pitch, who didn't light up the radar gun, even though Tommy's told me that he threw harder in high school than he did when he got into pro ball.
The longer they pitched, the less hard they threw. But I mean, it was basically by design. They felt that if they used a 90% effort, then they could control the pitch. And then I remember when the radar gun come in, and they had two different radar guns. One would register higher than the other.
The Jugs gun and the ray gun.
Yeah, and and you sit there and go, well, come on. And then Bobby and I were looking and said, well, that doesn't look that hard. He's not throwing that hard. I think Major League Baseball or some organizations mess with the radar gun. I've always said whatever the radar gun is, I'm going to subtract 4, and that'll pretty much tell me what my eyes see. Okay? But here's the thing. I was working with some East Cobb kids, teenagers. Father says, I want to bring in the radar gun. I said, I am doing no lessons if anybody brings a radar gun in. I want to know how he pitches, what his mechanics look like, if they have some touch on the ball. I don't care how hard he throws. Okay? Then I had 2 kids that have a chance of going to Florida State. They were juniors, throwing 86 miles an hour. They were tall kids, had a nice downhill angle going to the plate, and he had some complimentary pitches. And the father says, well, the scout told him that if they don't get the 92 by the time they graduate, they won't go into the second or third, I said, tell that scout to shove it up his ass, pardon me. Because that's the wrong information to give somebody. Right. And I told a couple scouts this: if you need radar guns to determine whether you think somebody's a prospect or not, you shouldn't scout. Then I also had coaches in high school and in the teenage all-stars say, Leo, when should a pitcher throw a breaking ball and how many innings should he pitch in a week? So first of all, I said, how many innings do you think a pitcher should pitch in a week if he's a teenager? He said 6. I said, well, if he can pitch on Monday and practice on Wednesday and pitch on Friday, that gives him 12. That's not going to hurt nothing, but if you're going to bring him back sooner, that's a different story. I said, now here's the other thing. I said, you want to know what the pitch count would be? I'm going to say, here's what I would do. If he was pitching well, I would leave him in. If he's getting his ass kicked, I'd take him out. But here's the most important thing. If he started showing signs of fatigue, but he was still getting people out, and you left him in, then you shouldn't coach. You got to recognize the fatigue factor that's going on out there, and understand that when fatigue sets in, you're done. If you need a pitch count or a number of innings to determine that, then you shouldn't coach.
What happened to, Leo, and all of you, what happened to the hitters will tell you?
Well, we used to hear that all the time. How am I pitching? Well, the hitters are telling you. You know, I mean, they'll tell you what's going on.
Forget
the reaction
all
of
the
the
numbers.
hitter to your pitches, that, in other words, we had some pitchers that would throw like 88, 89, but the guy, Fernandez, Sid Fernandez with the Mets years ago, he's throwing 87, but everybody's swinging and misses. You know what I mean? He had that deception of going underneath the ball a little bit, and then guys couldn't pick him up. And I think right now the greatest pitcher in baseball is Bartolo Colon. I love it.
He's going to get a 2-year deal
I'm
somewhere.
throwing strikes at 82 and nobody can hit him.
And he can still hit a net. He can still hit a net in the butt.
Ed, can I add something to that? Leo's a little shy and humble, so I'm going to try to add to it. You should come out of your shell a
Yeah,
little
you got me rocking now.
I get emails and phone calls every week, and I get some from major league teams, and I get some from moms and dads who are high schools. And so I think a lot of what you guys are saying is totally true at the professional level, but it's two different stories. I think, you know, I'm greatly responsible for this pitch count rule that's in Little League and a lot of things. And even though I helped get it instituted, I'm agreeing with you that it's not the best solution. The best solution is if a pitcher is fatigued, take him out. I've done a lot of research over the years, and the one study that had the strongest result was a study that showed the pitchers who kept pitching after they were fatigued were 36 times more likely to end up having surgery than pitchers who stopped pitching when they were fatigued. 36 times, okay? So if there's one rule I can make throughout baseball, it's keep pitching, and your fatigue stopped. I have a lot of smart computers and a lot of smart people, but frankly, this is the smartest computer. The pitcher's head, even those high school kids who we think are not so smart, if you have some high school kids, they have the best computer here, and when their head says, I'm fatigued, they should stop. Now, the problem is, I just want to say, that rule works in the professional level. You have professional coaches who are the best, and professional athletes who know their body, and professional coaches who, frankly, to some extent, are scared. They don't want their multi-million-dollar pitcher getting hurt and them getting fired. They got a good job, and they don't want to get fired. You have high school coaches who are at the other side. They'll tell me, they call me, they email me, they say, no pitchers ever got hurt on my watch. Well, they got hurt 2 years after they graduated from you, and you don't see them get hurt. And the high school coach, he wants to win now. He wants to win this year. This is my best pitcher. I'm going to make him pitch as much as possible. I don't think I'm hurting him because he doesn't get hurt on my watch, but he is hurting him. So unfortunately, I think fatigue is the best rule for the professional coaches like you and professional pitchers like you. But I think it doesn't work at the youth level, and we need pitch count rules there just because the coaches and the players aren't as elite.
And you guys put the 85 pitch count in, right?
Yes. Yeah, so we have a whole guideline. We did with ASMI, when you and I were on USA Baseball together, committee, we made some rules, and that's been refined over the years, and Dr. Ahmad and I and the rest of the Pitch Smart committee has the exact
I've got to
numbers.
put a rock on Barry Goldberg's grave sometime soon. But anyhow, here's my thing. 12-year-old kid can throw 85 pitches. And he can't pitch for 5 days. A major league pitcher with strength coaches, nutritionists, trainers, therapists, all this stuff can only throw 15 more pitches than a 12-year-old? One of those numbers is wrong. Either Glenn's number and Dr. Andrews' number is wrong, or Major League Baseball's wrong. Now, I'm not saying which one is. I know, or in my heart I know, but, you know, 15 more pitches, you're telling me, a mature guy? And one of the things that, we had one of these symposiums out in Santa Monica a couple weeks ago, and had an orthopedic surgeon and a physical therapist, and the great Tom House was there, telling us all the things that he did, and my son and myself. And one of the things my son said is Tommy's a chiropractor, but he has a injury prevention and healing clinic that he doesn't crack backs or whatever. he teaches people to get stronger. He said, the whole thing is movement. You got to keep moving. You know, you don't rest during the off season. You keep moving. You keep doing exercises. Kids today are into tablets and iPhones and all this, and their heads are hunched over and they're like this. Your head weighs about 14 pounds, right? Unless you got a big gourd like yours. If your head, if you're in line, it weighs 14 pounds. If you go forward, it weighs whatever it is, 26, 28 pounds. And we did this thing. We had people get up in the room, stand up with your head like this, and touch your hands over your head. It was easy. Your head forward, your hands over. God, your shoulders get impinged just with that head going forward. And that's where these kids, developmentally, they're retarded because they don't get outside and play. They don't climb trees. They don't dig foxholes. They don't do any of these things. They're in on the computer. They're doing this and that. Their heads are forward. And it's just, it's a big mess. And, you know, it's all about strength. How much force your body can withstand. The stronger you are, the more force that you can withstand. But nobody wants to do that anymore. In fact, you get guys in the big leagues. I was a guest instructor with the Yankees one year, and our strength coach was a guy named Jeff Mangold. And Jeff was there in my last few years. So I'm down there watching the guys run. At eight throws with the ball, they would run across, boom. They're done. I said, they're done? He said, Tommy, it's a different environment now than when you were here. And he says, oh, well, the guys will go in and they'll work out. So I go in the workout room. They had the guys with the TV on, riding a bicycle, watching TV. That's working out. Watching TV and working out or doing all this stuff. I said, my God, you know, what's happened? And this was back in 2005, 6, 7, 5 and 6, because 7 I managed the bluefish up here. But you know, it's guys 8 sprints across, and they weren't even sprints. They were little more than a fast walk. And that was it. And you know, let's work out. Let's work. Let's get our bodies in shape so that we can withstand the force that throwing a baseball. You know, and I'll tell you something else, Eddie. Leo's mentor, Johnny Sane, and I apologize to him. We had him down when I was broadcasting at Charlotte. We brought a bunch of the Braves in, Necro and Lou Burdette and Johnny and I forget who else. And I apologized in front of the whole people out there, and I said, Johnny Sane was my pitching coach with the White Sox, 1971. He wanted us to throw more, throw more, throw more. 4 times, 4 consecutive starts, I pitched on 2 days rest. And I told him, I said, Johnny, when I was 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, I could have done it easier at that age than I did when I was 28, when you had me. Because, again, I thought everything was, you know, and we just backed off. We were taught, you find out how good your fastball is that night. The first inning, you find out, you know, is it good, it's got movement, boom, okay. And then you back off of it. And that's what you throw at. And some nights it's not there. So you got to go to plan B or plan C or plan D. You know, I pitched a game one time throwing sidearm. And why'd you do that? Because my fastball stunk. And I just threw out of here to give them something to look at, and threw up here and threw down there because I had to get 6, 7 innings out of me. And you know, it's just, I think the whole mindset is that we've got to show them our butt and throw the ball as hard as you can. And again, Kim, this is to you. When you're playing golf and you're watching these guys drive a golf ball, same thing on the tour now. They go boom, and every tee shot they hit is max effort. Well, the balls will be going, Tiger Woods, the ball's going right, and the ball's going left, and it's in the woods, it's in the rough, and it's that. But if they would back off and hit about 90%, 85% of max effort, they would be able to control the ball. And I'll tell you, I can't play golf anymore because of age caught up to me. But I'm thinking of having a Caitlyn Jenner operation so I can play from the red tees.
You heard it here first.
Because I want to play from the red tees. And it's the lack of power, lack of strength. It's, gosh darn, everything now is max effort, max power, max effort, max power.
How many guys in the batter's box have just one swing?
What do you mean, one swing?
They just have one swing. That's all. They don't alter their swing at all.
Well,
and
most,
it's the same. It's
yeah,
the same thing.
Right. Yeah. And then you tried to pitch away from that swing.
The numbers are staggering with regard to Tommy John surgery and to pitching. Major League Baseball is spending $1.7 billion on pitching. And despite the most precautions in the history of the game is being altered by this tsunami of injuries. It's in crisis. I've been saying this is our concussions, Dr. Ramad.
Yeah, it's the biggest problem that we're dealing with in baseball. And I had the fortune of having Dr. Job teach me how to do the operation, and there's something that's special, there's something that's sensational about this operation, but what's really frustrating and discouraging is about how it is becoming so common, and especially in the young kids. The kids are growing this problem faster than anybody else, so the attention is to the professional athletes. 2014, big spike in Tommy John surgery. Bud Selig creates a task force. During that time where the spike is increasing in the professional athletes, the actual fastest growing group that is needing the surgery is the 17 and 18-year-old. They're growing faster than anybody else. And we talked about specialization, year-round baseball, throwing hard, max effort. There's something that goes along with that. That is the professionalism that's happening at an early age. The professional athlete now, let's just say in any organization, has their manager, general manager, their pitching coach, an athletic trainer, a physical therapist, a chiropractor, a masseuse, an agent, and the list goes on and on. Nutritionist, sleep person. The young athletes have the same thing now. 13-year-olds have their own strength and conditioning coaches, multiple pitching coaches. Their professionalism at a young age is different than, of course, what it was like a generation ago. So that's leading to this dream of, I need to be performing at the highest level. And we mentioned it, but just to say it again, when I go through the draft, part of my responsibility is to look at all our potential picks and assess them for risk of a pick that may get injured in the future. And 8 years ago, 9 years ago when I first started, high school kids look great. Great x-rays, great MRIs. A lot of them didn't have MRIs. Every kid now in the draft who's 18 years old has an MRI scan of his back, of his shoulder, and his elbow. They've all had back injuries, and their elbows look like they're 30-year-old free agents. So it's changing. Every year there's an environment of, there's just a challenge on how to get risk assessed in these young kids. I'm going to tell one story about Dr. Job. So when I wanted to learn this operation, it's an amazing operation, and last Friday I did 3 of them, a high school kid, a college kid, and a gentleman who got released from a professional organization. And when I first learned this operation, I went specifically out to LA to the inventor. I spent a year with him, and I was so excited about the opportunity to sit down with him across a table with the arm in front of us and get going to work and learn how to do it. And this is in 2001, so he had about 25 years of experience. So he sits down in the other side of the table and he says to me, looks me in the eye and says, I've done so many of these things. let's make this one interesting. I'm going to do it lefty. So he grabs the scalpel with his left hand and he starts cutting lefty, and everybody is amazed. I'm more amazed than anybody else, but the joke is he is left-handed.
You had me good time right there. Wow.
I tell you about Dr. Joe. When I was with the Dodgers, all the wives would meet over by the tennis courts, and they would sit around and talk, and they made Mr. O'Malley head covers because he had something like every club in his bag except wedges were woods. So they had all these Dodger blue and white knit head covers with tassels. Then after lunch, they'd play tennis. Well, come in the afternoon, here comes this guy carrying a bag with his lefty skinny legs. Was Dr. Joe played tennis with the wives. And I told him, I said, you know, don't get hurt. You know, my God, if you pull a muscle or whatever, you won't be able to work. But thank God he is a surgeon, because he had no chance to play tennis.
You know what, Dr. Ahmad, I think one thing we got to figure out. We got to figure out how to get, if for youth baseball, a manager, player, coaches, trainers, doctors, how do we get them all on the same page? That's what we got to figure out to try to keep these kids healthy. And that's why I've joined the Baseball Health Network. We're going to get the message out to them in the best way we can. But I hear so many different things from trainers, then I hear different things from pitching coaches, then I hear different things. And I'm also, it's not the players that are the youth that's playing the game. It's the people that are running the game. It's the managers, the coaches. They act like idiots, like these kids should be Cy Young Award winners, you know, when they're 13 years old. And it's almost embarrassing to go to a ball game and listen to that crap that comes out of their mouth. Okay? So we got to figure out a way to educate these people, and we need guys like us up here to try to get the message out.
I'm sure there's parents in the room, so this isn't reflective of any of the parents here. It's not them, it's not you. But I see patients in 6 exam rooms typically. Exam rooms around this time of year are filled with throwers. And when you walk into a room, you can get a sense of the intensity right away. The kid's got his hat on, he's got his sunglasses on top of his hat, and he's got his uniform on, and he's got his bag with his glove and his bat knit, and he thinks we're going to do something that minute to get him to practice later that day. But what's more concerning is that dad has his hat on, his sunglasses on, his uniform on, and he's got his glove and bat. And when you ask the kid what happened, and even if you stand between the dad and the kid, or the mom and the kid, how does your elbow feel? Well, our elbow's been pretty good lately. Well, when did it start hurt? We were pitching pretty good into the 3rd inning. We started feeling it in the 4th inning. What did you do after you felt it? Well, we went in and got some ice. And we've been icing it ever since. We shut it down for a period of time, and we thought we'd come in and get an MRI scan. So we start changing the we. You know there's a different intensity. And how about we